Car makes a noise it's never made before. That thunk, thunk, thunk sound that every mechanic somehow already knows the price of before they even look under the hood. For one person, this is a Tuesday. Mildly annoying. They call the shop, drop off the car, pay the bill, move on with their life. For another person, this exact same noise triggers something close to a panic attack because that repair bill isn't just a repair bill. It's a choice between fixing the car and paying rent. It's a call to a family member they swore they'd never ask again. It's 3 sleepless nights doing math that shouldn't take 3 sleepless nights. Same noise, same car, same repair bill. 2 completely different realities. And the gap between those 2 people isn't a college degree. It isn't a 6-figure salary. It isn't luck. It's one number, and it's way smaller than you think. My name is Nick, and I spend an unreasonable amount of time thinking about the specific dollar amounts where people's entire relationship with money quietly flips. If you've ever felt like financial security is some far-off finish line that requires 6 figures to even approach, stick around, because I'm about to prove that's completely wrong. And if this changes how you see your own bank account, do me a favor and hit subscribe, because apparently that's how the algorithm decides whether humans found something useful. Now, if you've spent any time in personal finance content, you've probably heard people talk about the real milestones. Your first $10,000, your first $20,000, the moment your net worth crosses 6 figures, and those numbers matter, don't get me wrong. But here's what almost nobody talks about, and it's honestly a little insane that we skip over it. There's a threshold that comes way before any of those, and it does more to change your day-to-day mental state than every milestone after it combined. It's not $10,000, it's not $5,000, it's not even $2,000, it's $1,000, that's it. A number so small that most financial influencers consider it beneath discussing. And that's exactly the problem, because for a huge percentage of people, $1,000 isn't a rounding error. It's the difference between crisis and inconvenience. Here's why $1,000 specifically. It's not a random number I picked because it sounds nice in a title. It happens to be roughly the cost of the most common financial curveballs life throws at you. A car repair, an emergency room copay, a broken appliance, a last-minute flight home. Almost every unexpected expense that derails a normal person's month lands somewhere in the hundreds to low thousands. Federal Reserve survey data has shown for years that a meaningful share of American adults would struggle to cover a surprise $400 expense using cash or its equivalent, without borrowing or selling something. Not a $10,000 expense. $400. That's how thin the margin is for a huge chunk of people walking around right now. So when you build a buffer of $1,000, you're not getting rich. You're doing something different and honestly more important. You're removing the most common financial punches life throws before they ever land. Think about it like this. Imagine you're walking a tightrope, except every 20 feet or so, someone throws a tennis ball at you. If you've got nothing in your hands, every single ball knocks you off balance. You wobble, you catch yourself, you keep walking, but your focus never leaves those incoming balls. Now, imagine you're holding a small net. Suddenly, those same tennis balls just bounce off. You barely notice them. You're not stronger, you're not a different person. You just have one simple tool that absorbs the impact life keeps throwing at you. That net is $1,000. It doesn't stop the balls from coming. It just stops them from knocking you off the rope. Here's where it gets genuinely interesting, because the effect of this number isn't just financial, it's neurological. When you have zero buffer, your brain treats every unexpected expense as a threat to survival. And I mean that almost literally. Psychologists describe this as scarcity mindset, and the research on it is kind of wild. When your brain is preoccupied with not having enough, it actually behaves like it's short on cognitive bandwidth, similar to what happens when someone's sleep deprived. You make worse decisions, not because you're bad with money, but because your brain is too busy firefighting to think clearly about anything else.
Let's make this real with 2 people. Same city, same job, same $52,000 salary. We'll call them Maya and Jordan. Maya has $0 saved, not because she's irresponsible, just because life has been life. Rent, student loans, the usual math that never quite adds up to a surplus. Jordan, for the last 4 months, has been quietly setting aside $60 a week. Nothing dramatic. He barely notices it leaving his account. By month 4, he's sitting on a little over $1,000. Then, on the same week, both of their laptops die. Ancient, wheezing, 5 years past their prime laptops, and both of them need this laptop for work. Maya panics. She can't cover a new laptop, so she puts it on a credit card at 24% interest. And now she's not just dealing with a dead laptop, she's dealing with a $900 balance that's going to sit there generating interest for months. Worse, without a laptop for 2 days while she figures out financing, she nearly loses a freelance client who needed deliverables on a deadline. Jordan opens his savings, buys a laptop the same afternoon, and is back to work by the next morning. No interest, no stress, no client drama, just a slightly smaller savings account that he'll rebuild in a couple of months. Same income, same broken laptop. One of them just spent 2 sleepless nights and $900 in eventual interest. The other spent an afternoon. That's not a story about intelligence or work ethic. That's a story about one number, $1,000. The reframe/nuance. Now, before this turns into everyone must have a perfect emergency fund or they're failing at adulthood, let's be honest about the other side of this, because the math isn't quite that simple for everyone. If you're carrying high-interest debt, say a credit card sitting at 24% or more, there's a real argument that aggressively paying that down matters just as much, sometimes more, than building your buffer first. A dollar that kills 24% interest is doing more for you than a dollar sitting in a savings account earning close to nothing. Plenty of reasonable financial plans build a small starter cushion, something like $500 to $1,000, and then throw everything else at high-interest debt before circling back to build the fund up further. There's also no universe where saving $1,000 fixes a budget that's structurally underwater, where expenses simply exceed income every single month. That's a different problem requiring a different conversation, and no amount of emergency fund discourse solves it on its own. So this isn't a magic number that erases every financial problem. It's a floor. It's the first piece of stability that everything else gets built on top of. Here's the part that should feel encouraging rather than overwhelming. Getting to $1,000 is not the same climb as getting to $20,000. If you set aside $40 a week, you're there in about 6 months. $80 a week gets you there in 3. You don't need a complicated system. You don't need to cut out every coffee or turn your life into a spreadsheet. You need one recurring transfer that happens automatically before you have the chance to spend it, sitting in an account that's slightly annoying to access, so it isn't just sitting in your checking account begging to be spent on something else. The goal isn't perfection. It's $1,000 between you and the next thunk, thunk, thunk sound your car makes. So the next time you hear people talk about needing 6 figures before you can feel any sense of financial calm, remember Maya and Jordan. Remember that the biggest shift in how money feels day to day doesn't happen at $20,000, and it definitely doesn't happen at $100,000. It happens at $1,000. It's the cheapest peace of mind you will ever buy, and almost nobody's telling you that it's the first number that actually matters. Subscribe, because next we're going to talk about what happens at the next threshold, the one where your money stops just protecting you and starts actually working for you.